Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing really well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm delighted you've joined me tonight for part 4 of our story. And if you haven't heard part 1, part 2 and part 3, please click on the description because you don't want to miss out on this fabulous story, because I always say nothing beats a good story, and this is an excellent story. So let's continue with part 4 of our story. Izzy felt a measure of relief when 2 uniformed officers arrived at her house. "Oh, thank God you're here! I'm so glad you're here, officers!" Izzy wailed. "My daughter is missing! You've got to help me find her! I don't know where she's gone!" "Calm down, ma'am," said one of the officers. "First things first. We need to ask you some questions, ma'am, to establish the whereabouts of your child. Your daughter may have wandered off, but she may have been abducted. And if indeed that is the case, your child may well know the person that has abducted her. We need to consider all the options. So I need to discuss with you anyone that might have been showing an interest in your daughter of late." "Officer, are you not listening to a word I'm saying? My child is missing! My child is gone! She could be anywhere, and your talking like this is slowing down the search, delaying everything. You need to be in those woods now, looking for her. My daughter loves those woods. She claims to have a fictitious friend in there. I think that's where she must have gone. And, officer, there's a creek in the woods. She could be in danger of drowning." "We have called back up, ma'am. They will be searching the premises thoroughly for your child. We will certainly be checking the creek. But we still need to ask you the all-important questions, ma'am. We cannot proceed in an investigation with a blindfold over our eyes. I'm sure you appreciate that." Everything that transpired in those vital moments, when the officers arrived promptly on the scene, and when the police began to search the woodgrove, was a blur to Izzy, wrapped up in a tenebrific veil of obscurity, much like the mysterious shapes buried in a child's Christmas stocking, that you can never really know what they are. It's difficult to remember the sequence of events when your mind is spinning like a washing machine, and it's hard to keep track of your thoughts. Izzy remembered the concerned voices of the officers, who were trying to calm her down. They had been telling her that if she panicked, she would delay the search in finding her child. But how could she not panic? It was impossible not to. Clarice was her entire world, and without her daughter, Izzy wasn't sure she could move forward in her life. The officers had ploughed her with tissues and strong cups of sweet tea, assuring her over and over again that the property was being thoroughly searched. "You must appreciate, ma'am, that it's very dark outside. We're doing our very best to search for your daughter." One of the officers, a man with silvery grey hair and piercing blue eyes, was asking her if she knew of anyone who would have reason to abduct Clarice. "No, of course I don't," said Izzy defensively. "Why would anyone want to abduct my daughter?" The officer with the grey hair ran a hand across his chin. "Ma'am, if there is anything you know, you must tell us, because any delay will reduce your chances in being reunited with your child. I need you to tell me anything that may not even seem very significant to you. I have a sense that you are keeping something from us." Izzy flushed, feeling the redness creeping up her face. "My daughter, well, I'm not sure if she is my husband's child. She might be the daughter of 2 men. The 2 officers exchanged looks. "I know what you're thinking, but I'm not a cheap floozy. Really, I'm not. I got drunk one night and was intimate with 2 other men before my wedding. I knew both the men. They might suspect that my daughter is their child." "So you think that they know that she might be their child?" "It's a possibility," said Izzy, tears trailing down her cheeks. "Don't you worry, man. You need to give us their details. We will be checking them out." "You cannot let them know that they might be the father of my daughter. If my husband heard about this, there is no telling what he would do." "Look, man, don't get distressed. We will handle things as discreetly as possible. Tyler's account. What had I done? I couldn't believe it. It had been so instantaneous, so fast, so impulsive, that I didn't have the time to stop myself from doing what I did. What was wrong with me? I had just wanted to confront Izzy about the fact that Clarice might indeed be my daughter. I'd thought about it long and hard. I wanted to be a father to my child. I had the right to know my little girl, did I not? I had clandestinely driven down the sweeping driveway to the sprawling, rather opulent-looking residence, where a grandiose white property was lost in the dark shadows of the early evening. But I could see enough to know that Izzy had done incredibly well for herself, and married a man who could wrap her in clover for the rest of her life, and offer her a sumptuous lifestyle. I climbed rather nervously out of my black Range Rover, because I knew my presence on Izzy's property would probably not be welcome. I was about to knock on the door, when I discovered the front door was ajar, and had not been bolted shut. I could hear a girl's musical laughter, and I was drawn to that laughter like a bee to a can of sugary cola. I knew I should remain at the front door. That would be a polite thing to do. But curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself almost floating through the house and walking towards Izzy's glossy white kitchen. And there she was, a cute, adorable little girl with chubby cheeks, looking up at me with wide, mischievous green eyes. She was playing with some food on her plate that looked suspiciously like fish fingers and tomato ketchup. "Who are you?" she asked me. In that moment I could see myself in this precious little girl. I knew she was mine. I absolutely knew it. This girl was my daughter. "I'm a friend of yours," I said to her. "But I've never seen you before," said the little girl. "Do you like cats?" she asked me. "Yes, I like cats," I told her. Clarice's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. "Mummy says that I can have a little kitten when I turn 4 years old, and I'm going to call him Pluto." "That's a very nice name," I told her. "I like the name Pluto." "My daddy says that there is a planet in the sky that is called Pluto, so Pluto is a very big name, so my cat is going to be very, very big." "My cat Inca is a white and black cat, a very attractive-looking cat, you know. She's got a litter of kittens that are over 8 weeks old at home. Maybe you can come home with me and choose a kitten for yourself to bring back home." "Oh, I want to come with you now! I want to get my little kitten now! Can we go, please?" The little child unhesitantly took my hand. She began to jump up and down excitedly, and my heart melted like chocolate. I could not turn this little girl down, so we discreetly slipped out of the kitchen door, leaving it half open, and she got into my black Range Rover with me, talking excitedly all the way to my house about my kittens. I had potentially abducted my own child, and I wasn't sure about what the legal ramifications of that were. Izzy would be out of her mind with worry, wondering what had happened to her little child. I had not thought any of this through, but now that I had my daughter in the truck with me, I didn't want to give her back. I felt almost possessive towards her. I wanted her to grow up with me, knowing that I was her real father. I didn't know how I was going to make this happen, because from what I'd learnt from Lucy, Izzy was not agreeable. She was in absolute denial that we had been intimate on that night of her hen party. When we arrived at my house, little Clarice darted over to the kittens with delight and was playing with all of them. I looked down at my cell phone to see that Lucy was calling me. "Please don't tell me you've abducted little Clarice," she said. "You didn't, did you?" came her stern, anxious voice. "Oh my God, you didn't, did you?" "I've got her here with me. She's perfectly safe," I admitted. "She's looking at my kittens right now." "What the hell were you thinking, Tyler? Are you stark raving mad? Do you want to end up in prison for the rest of your life? I thought you had more common sense than this. I can't believe you've done something so outrageous." "But I know she's my little girl, Lucy. I'm not going to stand back and ignore this fact. Don't I have a right as a parent to spend time with my child? If I'm her father, how can this even be considered an abduction? You don't know that you are her father, Tyler. You don't know that at all. She may well be Chuck's child. And even if you are the father, it's still considered abduction by law. Stealing a kid away from her parent is a criminal offence. You forget that Izzy is my very best friend. You have no idea how terrified she is that something quite awful has happened to her daughter. How could you do something so stupid, Tyler? But she looks exactly like me. Lots of kids look like Clarice at her age. Without a DNA test, you'll never know if she's yours. Look, I can talk to Izzy for you. I'm sure there is a way around this that we can organise for you to have access to Clarice if she is your girl. But this is not the right way to do things, Tyler. You could go to prison doing what you've just done. I've just spoken to Izzy. She thinks her daughter's wandered off into the woods to look for the bear lady. But if she starts concerning herself with the possibility of an abduction, you're the first person the police will be looking for. I have told Izzy everything. She knows I know about the hen party and that you're concerned that her daughter may be your child. She's denied it, of course. She told me nothing happened between the two of you. But I knew she was lying. If you try to run off with Clarice like this, the police will catch you. There is no way out, and you will be in serious trouble. And forget any chances of having any interaction with your daughter. That won't happen. Then you'll never get to see her after doing something like this. Do you realise what you've done? This is madness. I can't believe you've abducted her, Tyler. I've got to take her back before you get into serious trouble. Oh, my God, Lucy. You're absolutely right. What have I done? I'm an idiot. I could lose any chance of getting to know my daughter because of doing something like this. What on earth was I thinking? You weren't thinking, that's the problem, Tyler. Now you need to stay right where you are. I'll pick up Clarice and think of a plan. Everything will be fine, I promise. I'll take Clarice to the woodgrove and then pretend to find her there. Everyone will think she wandered off to look for the bear lady. That's the best I can do for you, Tyler. Lucy knows I'm coming over to her house because she is in a dreadful panic about everything. She's already called the police. Lucy's account. I knew at once when Izzy phoned me in a dreadful state, a state that no mother wants to ever be in, to tell me that Clarice was gone, that my cousin Tyler was in some way responsible for her abduction. But how could I possibly tell her that? I did not want to implicate my cousin. I didn't want Tyler to get in any kind of trouble. In some way I had to get him out of this pickle that he'd found himself embroiled in. I love my cousin Tyler, and I didn't particularly appreciate having to cover up for him. But sometimes he would do such foolish things that did not engage any sound reasoning, and this was one of them. I've known him all my life, and he's one of the most impulsive people you can ever hope to meet. But there isn't a bad or malicious bone in his entire body. I knew at once when he laid eyes on Clarice that his heart would melt, that he would have been absolutely convinced she was his little girl. And then once he'd established that, his common sense would fly out of the window like a balloon on the wind. Tyler is the kind of person that animals and people instinctively trust, so I'm not remotely surprised that Clarice went off with him in his truck. Clarice is one of the cleverest, most articulate 3-year-old girls I know, so she would not willingly just walk away with a random stranger. When I called my cousin Tyler, my worst, most dreadful fears were confirmed. When I listened to his quiet, rather fast breathing down the phone, followed by an ominous, uncomfortable silence, I knew then that he had Clarice, and he was now in a stunned stupor when he realised the ramifications of what he'd done. It suddenly occurred to him he had abducted a child, and that this was not a good thing. At least I knew Clarice was safe, but I had to get my cousin out of this trouble. So I had to think quickly on my feet, and I told him I'd be at his house in 2 ticks. When I arrived at Tyler's house, I could see he was in quite the state. His face was as white as a sheet. "Oh, thank God you've come, Lucy. What have I done? What have I done?" I'm such an idiot. I saw Clarice sitting there in the kitchen. I was certain she was my girl. And I don't know what happened. But I persuaded her to come home with me to see my cat's kittens. You should have seen her face when I told her about my cat Inca. She was so excited. She walks back with me to my truck, holding my hand. And I couldn't think straight. All I could think was that this is my girl. I was excited, really excited. I didn't think about the stress I would put Izzy through, or the potential trouble I could be in. What was I thinking, Lucy? Have I lost leave of my senses? As I told you on the phone, Tyler, this is a crazy thing what you've done, and you weren't thinking straight. What on earth were you doing at Izzy's house in the first place? Please don't tell me you were spying on the child. My cousin looked annoyed. He pulled a face, wrinkling up his brow in disgust. Of course I wasn't spying on the girl. I would never do a thing like that. I'm not a creep, Lucy. It was all very innocent, very above board. I just went over to Izzy's house to confront her, to talk about the fact that I thought her little daughter was my girl, and I wanted her to admit it to me. When I arrived at the front door, it was irresistibly ajar. I pushed it open very cautiously, and then I heard a child's chuckling, and I couldn't help myself. I had to follow that laughter. And there she was, in the kitchen. Do you have any idea what it's like, Lucy? To stare at something that you believe is your little girl. Oh, my word, I was so excited. I wasn't thinking what I did. Izzy wasn't even in the kitchen, and the girl, she was so adorable. I got talking to her about cats, and before I knew it, I was driving her back to my house in the truck. I stared at my cousin incredulously. This was a nightmare. Izzy had called the police, and I could smell trouble brewing, like the green vapour bubbling away from a witch's cauldron. I don't know what to say, Tyler. In theory, I should have called the police, but I'm not going to dob you in because you are a good person and you are my cousin and you made a dreadful mistake, and a very foolish one at that. But let me assure you that Izzy is incredibly distressed. Can you imagine what you put her through? She doesn't even know what has happened to her daughter. Do you have any idea, Tyler, what that does to a mother? Do you have any idea? I don't think you do. Clarice is her world, her everything. She loves the bones off that child. And we have not even established that you are her father, which makes this even crazier. And you go and do something like this? I said, shaking my head vigorously. I was not very happy with my cousin. In a trice I had led little Clarice by the hand to my less than glamorous Mazda and strapped her in the child seat at the back of my car, while Tyler waved at her and gave her a hug. She had chosen a kitten for herself that was luckily old enough to be rehomed. She was thrilled with the kitten, and none of the strange idiosyncratic events of the last couple of hours had in any way made her assume that anything was remotely wrong, or that her mother Izzy was now in a dreadful state, wondering where on earth she was. I had phoned up Izzy while I parked my Mazda on the side of the road, leaving Clarice playing with the new kitten in the back, that she was calling Pluto, even though it was a girl. I think Pluto's a little bit sad because she's not with her brothers and sisters right now, but I know she's going to be very happy in her new home. I know she is too, but right now I need you to be very, very quiet. Do you understand, Clarice? I need to make a phone call. I need to tell your mother we're coming back. Okay? So just be quiet, will you? I'll be very quiet. I won't breathe a word. Good girl. Izzy was comforted and assured to hear my voice. Oh, thank God, Lucy. Thank God you phoned. You're taking your time to get here. I need you desperately. I'm falling apart. This is such a mess. Such a mess. I don't know where my daughter's got to. They can't find her anywhere. They've searched the woods. Well, they've done their best. She told me that the police had done a rough provisional search of the woodgrove and had called off the search for the night, as even with their searchlights they were unable to see very much, but felt reasonably satisfied that little Clarice was not in the woods, and were exploring the theory that the girl had been abducted, either by a stranger or by someone she knew, and would be searching the property again at first light. There were still a couple of officers on the property. One was with her in the house, another was searching the house and the outbuildings. They were now going to be checking up on my cousin Tyler and Adam Applegate, of all things, two potential candidates that might have had a motive to abduct Izzy's child. It was hard to hear what Izzy was saying, because she was sobbing so much down the telephone. "Adam Applegate? Why would you be looking at him?" I asked. "What connection has he got to do with Clarice?" Izzy stopped sobbing and said, "Oh, Lucy, I've made such a dreadful mess of things, I really have. I lied to you about everything. I was so disgusted with myself, you see. You know the night of the hen party? Well, I was actually intimate with two men when I got drunk. Adam Applegate was one of them. Remember I told you once I had a crush on him since I was a little girl? It's a long story, but after I retired to bed that night, I met your cousin Tyler in the bar at the hotel to find some ice for my water. He insisted I had a nightcap with him, and I went back to his suite. And on my way back from his suite to go to mine, I bumped into Adam Applegate, of all people. Adam took me back to my suite, and I threw myself at him because I was so drunk. And I went back to his suite, and in one night I cheated on Chuck with two men. But I wasn't thinking, Lucy. I really wasn't thinking. You know, in the cold light of day, I'd never behave like this. It's contrary to my personality and my character. But when I drank that night, I had the morals of an alley cat. Don't judge me. Don't judge the men either, Lucy. I was two sheets to the wind. I really was. You saw what I was like. Anyway, I ran into Adam Applegate over a month ago at the supermarket. He was asking questions, Lucy, about Clarice's age. And the way he was looking at Clarice, it was so unsettling. I get this horrible feeling that he thought she might be his daughter. If you think your cousin looks like him, you're wrong. I'd say Adam Applegate is a dead ringer for Clarice. I'm convinced, Lucy, that he's the father. He might have abducted Clarice. What if he's abducted my daughter, Lucy? The police say that it's likely someone known to Clarice that would have abducted her. Maybe Adam Applegate has taken her. What if he has, Lucy? What if I've lost my little girl? And then there's your cousin, Lucy. I know Tyler's your cousin, and I don't want to be unkind. But do you think he could have taken my little girl? You've always said, based on what you told him about Clarice, not looking at all like Chuck, that he thinks he might be her father. Calm down, Izzy. I can't believe you were intimate with two men that night. You've got yourself in a dreadful mess. But we'll sort this out. No one is judging anyone. We're not immune to making mistakes in our lives. It's what makes us human. Let me tell you something. You will get Clarice back. I know you will. She's perfectly safe. I'm sure of it, 100% sure of it. So quit crying. Quit freaking out. She'll be returning home to you. I know she's fine. I feel it in my guts. You do? You have no idea how much better that makes me feel, Lucy. You've always been very instinctive. I don't just think she's fine, Izzy. I know she's fine. I'm pretty sure that both potential fathers have not abducted your daughter. I know Adam Applegate would never do something so stupid. And as for my cousin Tyler, I hope he'd have more common sense. But rest assured, if one of those men did take him, you'll know one thing for certain, and that is your daughter is safe, as none of those men would hurt a hair on her head. They're good people, so relax. If you want to know the truth, I think your daughter's probably in the Woodgrove right now. She probably went looking for her imaginary friend, the bear lady. And when she heard the police calling her, she probably hid. You know how she feels about strangers. She's probably frightened of the dark. She may be hiding somewhere. They probably didn't see her. You know, you're right, Lucy. Maybe she is hiding in the grove. and the police just scared her off. I tell you what I'll do, Izzy. I'm coming over to the house with my own flashlights, and I'll go into the grove and call her myself, and I'm sure I will find her for you. I wanted to tell Izzy, I've got your daughter. Everything's going to be all right. But I didn't want to get Tyler into trouble with the police. And in Izzy's current emotional state, there was no telling what she would do. I suspect she'd be so angry with Tyler that she might even file charges against him. And that I could not allow to happen, because Tyler was like a brother to me. Please get here quickly, Lucy. I need you here. The police want to send a police lady to look after me for emotional support. But I want to be with you. I can't believe this has happened, Lucy. It's so surreal. Where is your husband, Chuck? I asked, wondering how Chuck would react to the fact that two men may potentially have abducted his daughter, and these men might be Clarissa's real father. The police have tried to contact him, but we don't know where he went for dinner tonight. His cell phone is off. I mean, he is having dinner with someone very important. We can't trace him right now. I need to find Clarice before he learns the truth, Izzy. It'll destroy him if he finds out he's not Clarissa's father. I can't do that to him. I just can't. The police say they'll likely have to tell him why they're investigating both men. He's going to think I'm such a slapper, Izzy. But you know what? I'm beyond caring now. I want my daughter back. That's all that matters. I'm sure it won't come to that, I said. I'll be there shortly, I promise. I turned around to observe little Clarice sitting on the back seat, cuddling her little black and white kitten. She looked up at me with big green eyes. I could tell she was besotted over the little cat. I told Clarice that we were going to play a little game together, and that we were going to the woods to see the bear lady. I thought I would refer to her fictitious friend as being real, because the bear lady seemed real enough to Clarice, so I would humour her. After a recent walk in the woodgrove, Clarice was always talking about the bear lady, so I decided to use this to my advantage. The bear lady wants to see your kitten tonight, Clarice. I told her this to feed her imagination. She's eager to see your little kitten. You must tell her you're going to call it Pluto. Now I need you to stay in the woods until I come and get you. Do you understand that? The bear lady will come to your hiding spot and wait with you, so you won't be on your own. I said that because I knew her fictitious imaginary friend would probably give her comfort if she felt afraid in the dark woods alone on her own. I would be leaving her for a few minutes, and I didn't want her to become afraid, but I didn't have much choice in the matter. Do you think the bear lady will look after you, Clarissa? The bear lady will keep me safe in the woods because I'm scared of the dark, but the bear lady is very big and she'll look after me and Pluto. Of course she'll keep you both safe. I didn't like the idea of leaving Clarissa in the woods on her own, but I knew that my cousin Tyler could potentially get into grievous trouble with the cops if I didn't think outside of the box and do something to get him out of this scrape. I'll be gone for a few minutes, Clarissa, and that's all. I'm going to leave you in the woods all on your own, and I want you to be a brave little girl. Remember, we're playing a lovely game of hide and seek. I'll go and get your mother. She'll likely want to join me on my search for you. It's going to be very exciting, a fun game, and the prize is you get to keep Pluto for good. So you must do exactly as I say. I'll call your name and pretend to look for you, and you must stay in your hiding place, where I will decide you shall hide. Do you understand? I need you to be a very good, very brave little girl. I'll pretend to find you, and your mum will be so happy. You must pretend you found the kitten in the woods and you want to keep it. That way your mum will be so pleased to see you, she'll let you keep Pluto. If we don't play the game like this, then your mother might not let you keep Pluto. And you don't want that to happen, do you, Clarice? Because she said you could only have a kitten when you were 4 years old. Don't you remember she said that? Clarice nodded very seriously. Mummy said I could only have a kitten when I'm 4 years old, but if I'm in the woods all on my own and I'm very brave, she'll say I'm a brave girl because I'm not afraid of the dark and she'll let me keep Pluto. Exactly right. So you must be very brave. I could see Clarice was already devoted to her black and white kitten, and would do anything to keep him, even if it meant spending a few minutes in a dark wood grove. Soon my Mazda, that had seen better days, and was not cut out for dirt roads, was jolting up and down a back road, but little Clarice seemed to enjoy the ride in her seat at the back of my car, which had been fitted by Izzy a while back. I discreetly parked my truck behind a couple of trees at the back of my friend's property. I was worried I might see a police vehicle, but the sequestered road was void of any traffic. But I wasn't surprised, because Izzy told me they had abandoned the search, claiming it was too dark to see clearly. They were right. The moonlight tonight was uncooperative, and as for the stars, they seemed to have buried themselves behind the clouds, like shy snails in the sea sand. I knew the trails in the wood grove quite well, and so I picked Clarice up in my arms and carried her on my hips through the trees, using my headlamp to light up my path. I put the little kitten in the bottom of my shoulder bag, where it happily curled up in a ball, and did not protest very much, apart from the occasional mewing sound. There was a cool breeze blowing against my cheeks, and I will not kid, I was beginning to doubt I could go through with my plan very successfully. The wood grove was so intimidating, so dark, that without my headlamp I don't think I'd have had the courage to navigate my way through the trees. No wonder the police had given up the search. But images of my cousin Tyler locked up in a police cell urged me ever forward and helped me to overcome my trepidation. I was amazed that little Clarice was being so incredibly good. She never moaned once, nor did she complain about how dark it was. But her resolute determination to keep little Pluto seemed to conquer her anxiety. So this little girl, like her mother, had a steely grit that I have never before seen in a 3-year-old girl. Clarice is unusually bright for her age. I've always known that. I think at her age I'd have been terrified to hide in the dark woods. But I underestimate little Clarice's courage. She was made of tough stuff. The wood grove was filled with the trills of crickets and frogs, and the sounds were moderately reassuring to me. But the ambiguous dark shadows dancing through the trees was airily haunting. It didn't help that we were slapping away at hungry mosquitoes, determined to eat us alive. But I barely gave them a second thought, and neither did Clarice. I led the little girl to our favourite tree in the wood grove that was fringed by some bushy shrubbery. I was so grateful it was a warm night. At least Clarice would not get cold. I hugged little Clarice and told her to stay exactly where she was. You mustn't move, do you understand? She nodded. Let me tell you, leaving a 3-year-old in the woods was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and a decision I did not take lightly. But Clarice seemed so calm for one so young, although I could see she was growing restlessly tired, and was starting to suck her thumb. I could see how vulnerable and small she was, but I had to continue with this insane charade to protect my cousin. I could kill Tyler for having put me in such a precarious position. If anything happened to Clarice in the next few minutes, I'd never forgive myself, never. You're going to be all right? I asked little Clarice. Clarice nodded. I'm tired, Lucy, she told me, but I'll lie under the bush here with little Pluto, and I'll wait for the bear lady to come and for you to call me. And when Mummy comes into the wood grove as well. Good girl, Clarice. You're such a brave little girl. I'm proud of you, I said. I watched little Clarice curl up into a little ball under a large shrub. She was cuddling her well-behaved kitten to her chest, and I had a profound sense that she was going to be safe. I'm not sure where that feeling came from, but it was strong enough for me to leave the wood grove feeling reasonably reassured that all was going to plan, with a pounding heart that thundered through my chest like a booming drum. And I returned to my Mazda, driving down the dirt road at breakneck speed, a speed that I've never been able to replicate since. Everything after that is rather a blur, until I got to the house where there was a couple of police vehicles parked in the driveway, waiting in the wings. I guess they were in the house talking to Izzy. I discreetly killed the engine. I parked my car between the two vehicles and ran straight into the woods. It had occurred to me that the police might discourage me from going into the grove, but my car parked in the driveway would assure them that I went into the grove on my own personal search for little Clarice. Without even announcing my presence to them, It was just too bad that Izzy could not come along with me on the search, as I had initially planned. I wasted no time in dashing through the trees before anyone got to see me, but I knew exactly where I was going. I could see why the police had abandoned their search from earlier on, as even with my head torch, it was hard to see a thing. It was more tenebrific than I'd remembered from moments before, and there were times when I felt certain that there were dark, shadowy beings moving discreetly through the trees, staring at me with hostile eyes. Even my imagination was entertaining visions of ghostly spectres and headless horsemen. It really was airy and outer-worldly in the woods. It was a discomposing feeling. I could not afford to engage my fears, even though I felt as if I was not alone, and as if something was watching me. My focus needed to be finding little Clarice, and in the dark it was hard to see my way clearly, but thankfully the light of my headlamp pierced through the dark, tenebrific veil, as if I was one big bright firefly. When I thought I was close to the location where I'd left Clarice, I called out her name, and then I heard little Clarice's chuckles. So there we are. That is the end of part 4 of our story. Part 5 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.